Counter-Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Saturday, 11th of March 2023. So China has brokered some agreements and deals between Riyadh and Tehran, that's Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The security arrangement between Saudi and Iran from 2001 has been reconstituted. Back in 2016, relations particularly deteriorated between the two because of the Saudi execution of leading Shia cleric Sheikh Nimr in Saudi Arabia, in and around protests by the Shia community there against discrimination to them by the state. Also, things like the Syrian conflict since 2011 has also further divided Iran and Saudi from each other. They also back opposing sides in the violent conflict in Yemen as well. Interestingly, however, Saudi and Iran were on the same side during the Libya conflict in 2011 when the Islamic Republic of Iran turned their support essentially for the NATO strategy to overthrow the Libyan socialist state of Muammar Gaddafi as a quote-unquote Islamic awakening, and they sent people there to support the NATO proxy death squads in Benghazi, and also Lebanese Hezbollah were directly involved in that as well. So it's not a straightforward case that Iran always opposes Western imperialism throughout the Islamic world. But putting that aside for a second, to understand the problematic of this in general, one of the issues here is that if one only has a geopolitical commentary and reflection on the issue without seeing what's necessary for the unity and the upliftment in a socialist direction, there is no other direction for that, for oppressed and exploited people. Basically, if you have geopolitics without a real ethic and content and principle running through it, which is revolutionary, liberatory, then you're going to fall into right-wing toxic politics that is only going to oppress people even further. The people of the region, people of Saudi and Iran, they need a non-sectarian, unifying movement that, yes, brings stability and peace, but also struggles for greater returns of the wealth stolen from them by the respective capitalist states and the global capitalist situation. And so really, if you look at what this is doing, China is trying to posture like it's done something historical and great here. But actually, the agreements that they brokered between the two states are very tenuous. And the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very, very close with Donald Trump and his community of the Republican Party in the USA. So whatever China broker here, with the assumption that the Republican Party or an element of that is going to return to the White House just in the next 12 months or so, this whole deal will be weaponized in the Republicans' culture war and will be scuppered. Similarly, like the developing deal between the US and Iran around the Iranian nuclear program was scuppered within 6 months of Donald Trump ascending to the White House. So there's a lot of problematics there. But to return to the central issue, if we don't understand geopolitics through the prism of an anti-colonial socialist analysis and ethics and principles, then it's going to be right-wing politics are going to be reconstituted and recycled in an increasingly toxic manner. So what is the benefits? I mean, one always will argue a calming of tensions between global South states. But is this going to achieve that necessarily? One really has to put a major question mark over that at the very least. Going over to so-called Latin America, and one says so-called Latin America because the region of the Americas south of the US-Mexican border is not narrowly defined as Latin, i.e. basically a European colonial type of culture. Now, of course, Latin European colonial cultures are a part of Latin America because of the historic colonization and neocolonialism there, but it's wrong to term the entire southern continent as Latin America because there's a lot more influence of African heritage, native, and other diverse non-colonially related identities and realities there. But anyway, the Mexican government has been brokering the second round of talks with the Colombian government, represented by its first left-wing President Gustavo Petro and the second largest radical socialist anti-colonial guerrilla movement there, the ELN, the National Liberation Army, which has somewhat between 2,500 to 3,000 fighters, guerrilla members, armed personnel in the poorest regions of the Colombian countryside mostly. Now, the ELN grassroots are very cynical about this peace process, and really it has to be discussed and explored. Why would a revolutionary army of workers and peasants give up their militant capacity, i.e. their weapons? Capitalist states and colonial states never give up their weapons and elements of the state which has a violent capacity. Why does then a counterforce to that, which is socialist and anti-colonialist direction, ever want to even countenance the possibility of giving up the only real assured factor strategically of their existence and the self-defense of the people that they defend? I mean, this really has to be reflected upon and thought out a little bit more. The major issues, you can have all the peace process that you want, but the reason that there's a revolutionary struggle and an armed struggle on a mass level in places like Colombia for the last 4 or 5 decades or more is because of real issues to do with lack of land reform, i.e. the right of the peasants to be owning their land and the produce from that, and resisting those encroaching upon that, multinational neo-colonial capitalist companies and a neoliberal state that facilitates that. It's the lack of health clinics, health in general, educational facilities, and general just absence of infrastructure whereby revolutionary guerrilla like the ELN and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia provide exactly this type of medical help and education and other services to these forgotten, oppressed people. Coming back to Britain, the fallout from Gary Lineker's comment on his Twitter that the far-right Tories are implementing policies reminiscent in its language of 1930s Nazi Germany. Basically, Gary Lineker has been pushed out of his sports commentary jobs on the BBC this weekend, leading to many of his colleagues similarly basically walking out of the job, leading the BBC to make some kind of apologetic statement in terms of that it cannot deliver its sports programming this weekend because of that. And also, Gary Lineker is a very popular figure on TV, as is his close friend and colleague Ian Wright, former professional footballer, happens to be a black man, who's also not a racist, he's an anti-racist, so he's in the kind of liberal and left camp. He's also boycotted in solidarity with Gary Lineker his gigs on the BBC as well. It's created a big discussion here. It dominates all of the political and the news commentary. However, there is still an absence of grassroots struggle. Gary Lineker is not wrong. Yes, there is rising fascism of a Nazi type of variety here conducted by the Tories. So why then isn't the BBC headquarters in central London seeing mass militant protests in protesting exactly this fascisization of the state by the Tories, and the BBC collaborating in with that? The head of the BBC has donated hundreds of thousands of pounds to the Tory party, so it's very clear where his political allegiances lie. And just another quick comment on Russell Brand. Russell Brand has accepted a deal on the far right social media platform called Rumble. He's done a video with a toxic far right figure, Stephen Crowder, who's made extremely racist, crass comments against Mexican and Asian people, and just openly nasty homophobic comments. A very strange video of Russell Brand trying to square the circle of trying to positively engage with such a toxic right-wing figure as Stephen Crowder. It really indicates the Russell Brand's total capitulation into a unprincipled, opportunistic, ego-driven, narcissistic, fascist collaboration social media grift. And that's all it is to make money. And then you have very much reflective of modern times of this faux spiritualism, this spiritualism at the service of toxic right-wing trajectories and narcissistic grift and ego tripping. Russell Brand constantly tries to manipulate his followers and gain more followers by this false posture on spiritualism is just a total nonsense, which is, we can see similarly reflected in the way all of these spiritual ideas coming from often pre-capitalist societies in what's known as the West today, and from global South Asian ancient communities and systems and worldviews of life and the universe, which is then exploited in a very colonial capitalist way. It's like a form of cultural capital that those who are embedded and spout the politics of colonial capitalism then manipulate that, exploit that, and then spew it out into its counter opposite, serving their own narcissistic framework, which is a reflection of the framework of capitalist deceit, manipulation, and exploitation. That's Counter Narrative News. Please do continue supporting us by liking, commenting, and sharing our YouTube link and social media links. Please do encourage your friends and contacts to listen to our videos, discuss it with them, get their feedback. We welcome criticism and feedback. We really like this platform to grow. We'll be producing more different products and different types of programs, and we wish you a fantastic weekend. Thank you.